He wasn't supposed to be there. A rusted SUV engulfed in flames on the edge of a frozen forest. No witnesses, no license plate, just smoke, fire, and something moving inside. Bound, burned, left to die. But then a patrol officer stopped, not because he was ordered to, but because he heard a sound that broke him. A bark. What he found inside that car wasn't just a dog. It was a partner, a soldier, a forgotten hero tied to a case no one dared reopen. And what happened next will shatter your heart and rebuild it with hope. Before we start, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far loyalty can travel. And if you believe that some souls are worth saving, even in the darkest fire, hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to witness is not just a rescue, it's a rebirth. The wind moved like a blade through Pine Hollow, Montana that night, whispering across the brittle snow and through the empty streets like a warning no one could hear. The town was small, barely more than a church, a gas station, and a string of shuttered storefronts, but it sat nestled between ridgelines of tall, dark pines that could hide anything and everything. It was mid-January, the kind of night where your breath turned to glass, where the roads cracked under the cold, and the sky stayed bruised long after sunset. Liam Brooks had no reason to be on Pine Creek Road. His shift had ended at 9, and he should have been home nursing the headache that always came with winter and silence. But routine had a grip on him. The cold didn't bother him much, not anymore. At 30, Liam was a man of quiet posture and sharper memory. He was broad-shouldered, just shy of 6 feet, with a square jaw that often clenched without him realizing. His dark blonde hair curled at the edges beneath his knit patrol cap, and he kept his stubble short out of habit, not vanity. A thin, silvery scar curved just under his right jawline, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. That scar, like the quietness in his eyes, was fire-born. When Liam was 13, he had tried to save his 8-year-old sister Molly from a burning apartment. He had pulled and screamed and clawed at the smoke, but the fire had taken her. That was the moment his life split clean down the center. Ever since then, flame meant something more than heat. It meant guilt. It meant failure. So when he saw the smoke curling up above the trees near mile marker 16, something in him locked tight. He slowed his cruiser and pulled onto the shoulder. At first, he thought it might be chimney smoke from one of the hunting cabins, but it was too black, too heavy, and it carried that bitter chemical edge. He stepped out of the car and followed the smell downhill, through a break in the tree line. There, hidden in a shallow ditch between 2 snowbanks, was an SUV. Its front end was crumpled against a boulder. Flames licked hungrily beneath the hood and along the undercarriage, casting a trembling orange light across the forest floor. One headlight blinked weakly, like a dying signal. Liam swore under his breath. There was no sign of anyone nearby, no footprints, no tire tracks, no noise, except for the pop and hiss of the fire and the crackle of pine needles curling to ash. And then he heard it. A bark. Sharp, choked, alive. He froze, listened. There it was again, a desperate yelp, rising from inside the SUV like it was clawing up from beneath the flames. "God," he muttered, and sprinted toward the car. The windows were scorched black, spider-webbed with impact fractures. Liam circled to the rear's driver's side and peered through the smallest patch of clear glass. What he saw made his gut tighten. A German shepherd, about medium build, covered in ash. Its legs were bound tight with zip cords, and its muzzle had been strapped shut with coarse twine. The animal was panicked, eyes wide, chest heaving, legs twitching against its restraints. "No, no, no!" Liam ran back to his cruiser, grabbed the fire extinguisher from the trunk, and returned in seconds. With a sharp breath, he raised the extinguisher and slammed it into the rear window. Once, crack, twice, shatter. Smoke exploded outward like a living thing. Liam turned his face away and then plunged his arm inside, using the sleeve of his jacket as a shield. His gloved fingers fumbled for the cords. They were tight, melted in places. The plastic bit into his skin. The dog didn't fight him. It didn't even growl. It just held on. "Almost there, buddy," he said, voice hoarse from the heat. He drew his knife and sawed through the cords one by one. When the last one snapped, he reached in, grabbed the dog by the scruff, and yanked. The moment they cleared the door, the gas tank blew. A blast of fire roared behind them, lighting the trees with a burst of hellish light. Liam fell backward into the snow, curling around the dog as debris scattered across the forest. Ash fell like burnt confetti. They lay still. The shepherd whimpered softly. Its fur was burned along the side, one ear blistered and limp. Blood oozed from its paws, and its breathing was shallow but steady. "You're still here," Liam whispered. He gently stroked the side of its face. "You're one tough son of a gun." As he checked for wounds, his hand brushed against something on the dog's back leg. He leaned in. There, seared faintly into the flesh, was a brand. RGR. He stared. RGR. The dog's eyes flickered open at the sound. Liam's lips parted. "Ranger?" A twitch, barely there, but real. He nodded slowly. "That's it, isn't it? You're Ranger." The dog didn't respond. Not with a wag, not with a bark. But there was something in the way it exhaled, soft, like relief. Liam rose, cradling the dog in his arms. It was heavy, but he didn't care. The snow crunched under his boots as he climbed the embankment toward his cruiser. Behind him, the car blazed. Ahead of him, headlights cut through the dark. But off to the side, in the edge of the tree line, something moved. He stopped. There, standing half-shrouded by branches, was a figure. Tall, wearing a long coat, unmoving. The face was obscured by a dark scarf and the shadow of a hood. They didn't approach. They didn't speak. They just watched. And when Liam blinked, just once, the figure was gone. He turned his head, scanning the trees, but saw nothing. No tracks, no sound, just the rising wind, brushing through the pine needles like breath on the back of his neck. He looked down at the dog in his arms. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I think we just stepped into something real bad." Then he got into the cruiser, placed Ranger gently on the passenger seat, and drove toward the one place that might still be open. Holloway Veterinary. In the mirror, the glow of the fire faded, but something deeper had been lit, and it wasn't going out. The clinic sat quietly at the edge of town, tucked between a shuttered antique store and a boarded-up gas station. Holloway Veterinary was a 2-story brick building with peeling green paint and an old cedar sign that swung in the wind. The parking lot was dark, except for a single porch light glowing above the door, casting a soft golden haze onto the snow. Liam pulled up slowly, engine ticking as it cooled, and stepped out into the bitter cold. In the passenger seat, the German shepherd stirred. His breathing was more even now, but every motion made his body flinch. Liam scooped him up gently, cradling the dog in his arms, and crossed the lot toward the door. He didn't knock. Inside, the clinic smelled faintly of antiseptic and cedar shavings. The lights were low, most of the main floor unlit except for a hallway lamp that illuminated a narrow corridor beyond the reception desk. A calico cat blinked lazily from atop a filing cabinet, but didn't move. The only sound came from the soft hum of a space heater behind the counter. Then footsteps. Dr. Nora Mitchell appeared at the end of the hallway, wiping her hands with a towel. She was in her mid-30s, average height and slightly rounded in the shoulders, with straight ash blonde hair pulled into a ponytail that had long since started to come undone. Her face was open and expressive, the kind that always looked like it was 2 seconds from laughter or fury, depending on the situation. That night, it leaned toward concern. "Liam?" she asked, squinting. "Is that—" He stepped forward. "Need a favor." She moved fast after that. Within minutes, the back exam room was lit, clean, and warm. Ranger lay curled on a padded table, eyes half closed but alert. Liam stood nearby, arms crossed, watching as Nora gently examined the wounds. "You found him like this?" she asked, her voice low. "In a burning SUV off Pine Creek Road. Tied up. Left for dead." Nora didn't reply immediately. She gently lifted Ranger's hind leg. Her eyes narrowed. "There's a brand," Liam said before she could comment. "Left leg, RGR." "I see it." She turned slightly, then brushed her fingers along the shoulder blades. This was a harness, probably a canine rig, and these burns, older than the explosion, some of them. He's been through more than just that fire. Liam exhaled. "I think he was part of something bigger." Nora leaned down again. "Hold on. There's something under the skin, near the shoulder." "What is it?" "Feels like a chip. Could be a tracker or ID." She stood, moved to a drawer, pulled out a handheld scanner. A small beep echoed when she passed it over the spot. Text flickered onto the screen. Nora blinked. Well, he's registered, military database, active duty, well, formerly. Unit names redacted, but it references a joint operation contract. Serial code SCP-X08. SCP? She looked at him. That ring a bell? He nodded slowly. It's not military, at least not standard. SCP's been tied to closed federal investigations. Some black bag contracts, mostly narcotics or human trafficking. Nora glanced back at the dog. So, he wasn't just a pet. No. And that car fire wasn't just an accident. The room went quiet for a moment. Outside, wind howled past the window, like something trying to speak through glass. I'll sedate him lightly, Nora said finally, preparing a syringe. He needs burns treated, paws wrapped, probably a mild antibiotic shot. Liam stepped back. Do it, I'll stay. Nora nodded, but her eyes lingered on him. You all right? He paused. This feels familiar, like I've been here before. You mean the fire? No, Liam said. The silence after. She didn't press. She injected the sedative, then turned back to her tray of tools. Liam stayed beside the table, one hand resting lightly on Ranger's side. Outside the room, the doorbell above the clinic door chimed suddenly. Both Liam and Nora stiffened. Liam walked to the reception area, instinctive caution tightening his shoulders. At the front counter stood an old man, bent-backed, wrapped in a thick plaid coat, hat pulled low. His name was Walt Davis, a retired forest ranger who'd lived in Pine Hollow for nearly 5 decades. Evening, Officer Brooks, Walt said, voice raspy with age. Heard you were poking around Pine Creek tonight. Liam frowned. Didn't tell anyone I was out there. Walt chuckled. News travels, especially when there's fire involved. You here for something specific? The old man nodded slowly. Saw the smoke, reminded me of something. 10, maybe 12 years ago, a vehicle fire just like it. Same stretch of road, never officially solved. FBI rolled in, asked questions, then left without answers. You remember what they were looking at? Warehouse, Walt said. Old refrigeration facility. Shut down in the 90s. Place has been padlocked since, but kids sneak in sometimes. Someone said the feds were real interested in the drainage tunnels below. Liam stared at him. You think there's a connection? I think coincidences are rare in this town. Walt gave a soft nod, then turned and walked back into the night, leaving only the sound of wind through the trees and the fading jingle of the bell. Liam returned to the exam room. Nora was cleaning a burn on Ranger's side. Friend of yours? Not really, but he just gave me a lead. She didn't look up. You going to follow it? I think I have to. The room fell quiet again. Nora reached for clean bandages. Ranger stirred slightly, even under sedation, and turned his muzzle toward Liam's hand. Liam scratched gently behind his good ear. Hang in there, Ranger. You've already been through hell. The dog sighed, like he understood. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and slow, blanketing Pine Hollow in a hush. Somewhere down the road, shadows moved behind boarded-up windows. But for now, in the warm clinic, a man and a dog rested together, both haunted, both unfinished, and both about to become part of something they didn't yet understand. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving a pale sheet of frost over the windows of Holloway Veterinary. The world outside was quiet, too quiet for Liam's liking. Inside the exam room, the hum of medical equipment blended with the slow rhythm of Ranger's breathing. The sedative had worn off just enough for the dog to lift his head, though his eyes remained heavy, dulled with fatigue and pain. Liam sat nearby, his back to the wall, arms crossed, watching the dog as if waiting for some kind of answer. His thoughts tangled with fragments, military codes, Ranger's branded leg, the SCP entry in the chip record, and now Walt's cryptic warning about the old warehouse. But, above all, one name echoed louder than the rest: Emily Huxley. Nora entered the room carrying a tablet. She wore dark blue scrubs under a gray hoodie, her hair now tied in a neater braid. Though not tall, she moved with calm certainty, like someone used to both chaos and caretaking. Her voice when she spoke was soft but deliberate. I pulled up the full chip data from the Federal Registry, she said, handing the tablet to Liam. There was a security layer, but it's gone now. Guess someone deactivated it remotely. Liam took the tablet and stared at the screen. The name flashed at the top. Ranger, Breed, German Shepherd. Age, 5 years. Service record, active, SCP-X08 Joint Task Protocol. Handler, Detective Emily Huxley. Status, missing in action. Liam's jaw tightened. So, he wasn't abandoned. He was left behind. Nora nodded. And not by choice. Liam scrolled further. Attached to the bottom of the file was a voice memo. Audio file, time-stamped 7 months ago, labeled EH Final Entry. He hit play. A woman's voice came through, low, focused, tired. If anyone finds this, I'm running out of time. They've locked the tunnels. Ranger's the only one I trust now. If we don't make it, search the ice house. That's where they kept them. Then static. Then silence. Ranger lifted his head sharply. His ears twitched. His body tensed, tail stiff. He looked straight at the tablet, then at Liam, then let out a low, broken whine. He remembers her, Nora said softly. Liam knelt beside him. That was her, wasn't it, buddy? Ranger's paw inched forward. He pressed it lightly against Liam's boot and gave another quiet sound, halfway between a growl and a whimper. Nora crouched on the other side, frowning. There's something else. I didn't notice it until I cleaned around his neck last night. She brushed the fur gently aside and revealed a faint scar just beneath the collarbone. A rough, thin line, not surgical, torn, raw. This wasn't from the fire, she said. This was older, maybe a rope or wire. Liam's face darkened. They tortured him. And someone tried to erase the chip afterward. Half of the data is fragmented, but someone wanted him to disappear, not die. Before either of them could say more, the clinic bell chimed from the front. Liam stood, instinct again flaring, and walked to the reception area. A young woman stood there, no more than 25, bundled in a large denim jacket lined with faux shearling. Her dark curly hair peeked out from beneath a knit hat, and a Canon camera hung from a strap around her neck. She had a notepad in one hand, phone in the other, eyes alert and too curious for comfort. "Officer Brooks?" she asked, tilting her head. He frowned. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. Or at least, I know you pulled a dog out of a fire 2 nights ago. That dog is now a confirmed federal K-9 with a missing handler. That's a story." Liam's tone hardened. "Who are you?" She straightened. "Harper Lane. I write for the Rocky Northwest Dispatch. I cover weird stories, abandoned mine shafts, forgotten cold cases, experimental training programs, stuff no one else wants to touch." "Freelance?" "Mostly. Former intern at the Denver Sun. Didn't like their rules, so I went solo." Liam studied her. She was persistent, smart-mouthed, but sharp-eyed. Slim build, average height, wearing well-worn hiking boots and a messenger bag slung across her chest. A tape recorder peeked from the side pocket. He sighed. "You came all the way to Pine Hollow for this?" "I was already in town. Someone emailed me a photo of the burned SUV and said ask about the dog. No sender name, just that." Liam exchanged a look with Nora, who had joined them quietly at the doorway. "We're not commenting on anything," Nora said. "I get that," Harper replied. "But off the record, I've been following threads connected to SCP programs for a year. Every time I get close, files vanish, people shut up, or buildings burn. Your dog? He's not just a survivor, he's a witness." Liam narrowed his eyes. "And what do you want from him?" "Nothing. From you, just one truth. Was Emily Huxley working a federal case in this town?" Silence fell like snowfall between them. Then Liam said, "Come back in the morning. You'll get one question. Make it count." Harper smiled slightly. "Deal." She turned and left, boots crunching the snow as she disappeared into the fog outside. Back inside, Liam returned to the exam room. Ranger had his head lifted now, eyes fixed on the doorway. Liam crouched. "You remember her. You were with her when she disappeared. And now you're here, still fighting." Ranger pressed his paw again into Liam's boot, this time with more strength. "We'll find out what happened," Liam said quietly, "and we'll finish what she started." The dog didn't respond in words, but Liam saw it in his eyes, something not yet broken. Outside, the clouds were beginning to shift, letting thin rays of light through the cold gray sky. The morning sun barely broke through the dense gray cloud cover, casting a dull light across the frostbitten canopy as Liam guided his cruiser off the main road and onto a snow-covered trail that twisted through the woods north of Pine Hollow. Branches clawed at the windshield, and the tires crunched over hardened ice. In the passenger seat, Ranger sat upright, ears twitching as if tracking something only he could sense. His wounds had been dressed, his spirit bruised but intact, his eyes now more alert than Liam had yet seen. Whatever he remembered about Emily Huxley and the voice in that recording, it was driving him forward. Liam trusted that instinct. Ranger wasn't just reacting, he was leading. The chip's last recorded GPS ping had pointed to this area, a section of woodland known locally as Dry Cedar Ridge. Most people avoided it. Old mining stories, broken fences, and too many missing posters over the years had turned it into ghost territory. But Liam wasn't most people. After 20 minutes of crawling deeper into the woods, the trail ended in a shallow clearing. At its center stood a collapsed cabin, sagging on one side like a tired animal. Moss had overtaken the southern wall, and the roof bore more holes than shingles. One shutter hung by a single rusted hinge. Liam killed the engine and stepped out, hand resting unconsciously on the grip of his sidearm. Ranger jumped down beside him, nose immediately to the snow, tail stiff. The air was sharp with silence. Liam circled the front of the structure, noting the collapsed porch and shattered windows. The door had been pried open recently, too clean for storm damage. "Looks like someone's been here within the week," he muttered. Ranger growled low. They stepped inside. Dust coated the floor like a skin, but it had been disturbed. Faint boot prints, scuffs, drag marks. At the far wall, Ranger stopped dead. His posture changed, ears flat, eyes wide, body trembling just slightly. "What is it?" Liam whispered. Ranger approached slowly, nose to the wooden planks. Then Liam saw it. Long, vertical scratches along the inside wall, about shoulder height. Human. Not claw marks, not animal. Fingernails. Beside them, smeared along the aged wood, a faint rust-colored stain. Dried blood. Liam crouched, heart heavy. Emily was here. He reached for his phone, snapped a few pictures, then stood, mind racing. "They kept her here," he murmured. "But why leave the dog?" Before he could finish the thought, something snapped beneath his boot. A steel cord whipped upward from the floor. In an instant, Liam was hoisted off the ground, rope cinched around his ankle, body swinging up into the air like a hooked fish. His phone flew from his hand and clattered across the cabin. "Damn it!" he shouted, body swinging. Ranger barked in alarm, circling beneath him. Liam reached for his belt, but the rope was too tight, and his blood was already draining toward his head. A pressure bloomed behind his eyes. Then he heard it, snapping twigs outside. Someone was coming. Footsteps, 2 sets, approaching quickly. Voices, one male, low and harsh, the other higher, breathless. Liam didn't recognize them. "Check the place. He might have tripped it. Boss said to leave no trace this time." Ranger looked up at Liam, then bolted toward the cabin's front entrance and out into the woods. The men hadn't seen him yet. Hanging upside down, Liam twisted and reached for the knife sheathed behind his lower back, but the angle made it impossible. Then, suddenly, pain. A sharp pull against his ankle. Then again, gnawing. The rope trembled. Ranger had returned. The dog latched onto the cord with his teeth, growling low, using all his strength. Burned paws slid against the wood, but he didn't stop. The cord began to fray. The men outside were getting closer. "I think I saw something move inside." Snap. Liam dropped to the floor in a heavy thud, rolling into a crouch as Ranger barked once and ran toward the back door. Liam followed, limping from the impact, and they disappeared out the rear, just as the front door burst open. Behind them, angry voices and the cock of a gun. But neither Liam nor Ranger looked back. They ran through the trees, branches whipping at their faces, snow rising in puffs beneath each step. Ranger guided him, weaving between trunks, following something only he could smell. After 10 minutes, they ducked behind a fallen log and waited, breath clouding the air. Ranger collapsed beside him, panting hard. Liam placed a hand on the dog's side. "Hell of a rescue, boy." From a ridge across the clearing, a quiet shutter click echoed. Unheard, unseen. Harper Lane crouched low behind a fallen birch, camera in hand, gloves wrapped tight around the lens. She had followed Liam's cruiser at a distance, on foot, and had been photographing the cabin from afar when she spotted the ambush. Now she scrolled through her digital preview screen. The trap, the scratch marks, the blood, Ranger leaping at the cord, Liam falling. Then, the 2 men who entered the cabin, faces partly obscured, but one wore a patch on his shoulder she recognized. She frowned, heart pounding. She opened her phone, attached 3 photos to an anonymous email, and typed only one line in the subject line. They found the cabin. SCP's still active. Then she hit send. Back at the log, Liam rose slowly. His ankle throbbed, but nothing felt broken. Ranger licked his hand once, then laid his head down. Despite everything, there was strength still in his eyes. They had survived, but someone had been ready for them. Which meant the ghosts of this town weren't just old stories, they were still watching. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and soundless, as Liam parked the cruiser behind a crumbling service road that led to the edge of Pine Hollow's abandoned industrial yard. Branches arched overhead like the ribs of a buried skeleton, and beyond them, standing cold and alone, was the target, a half-collapsed warehouse once owned by the Wilcox Freight Company. The roof had caved in at the northeast corner. Vines had twisted through the walls like veins. The whole building looked like it had been exhaling secrets for years. Ranger jumped out first. His movements had grown stronger since the clinic, though he still favored his right side where the burns lingered. The moment his paws hit the snow, his nose dropped to the ground. He sniffed, snorted, then took a sharp left, tail stiff. "You smell something," Liam murmured, following close. "Let's see where it leads." They crept along the perimeter wall until Ranger stopped near a rusted loading bay. His body tensed, and he gave a low growl. There, at the edge of the doorframe, smeared faintly across the metal, was a thin trail of blood. Small droplets, not from an animal. Liam crouched, fresh enough to worry me. Ranger moved again, this time more urgently, paws crunching in the snow as he circled to a half-buried hatch behind the warehouse. The metal door had been forced open recently. Bolt broken, scrape marks along the frame. Inside, the air was dense with mold, rust, and something older, something rotten. Liam drew his flashlight. The beam swept across a long hall, cracked concrete floors, and old mechanical racks leaning like tired sentinels. The place hadn't seen workers in decades, but someone had been here recently. Ranger veered sharply toward a side room near the back. Inside was a scene that made Liam freeze. A battered workbench littered with zip ties, leather restraints, hypodermic caps. Dried blood crusted on a pair of pliers. Next to the bench, a crate half open revealed military-grade stun cuffs and an outdated radio still dusted with fingerprints. What the hell was this place? Pinned to the adjacent wall was a large water-stained map of Pine Hollow. Sections were circled in red: properties, alleyways, even individual homes. On the corner of the map, a taped sheet listed names in faded ink. 27 total, 19 of them crossed out in black, 5 in red, 3 left untouched. Liam scanned until his eyes landed on one, Marcus Brandt. His stomach turned. Brandt, Deputy Chief of Pine Hollow PD, a man everyone trusted, stoic, calculated, and known for speaking only when necessary. He wore his uniform like armor, always spotless, always crisp. And now his name sat here, marked in the same ink as murderers and ghosts. A low bark behind him. Ranger stood at the far end of the room, head tilted toward the floor. Liam walked over. The dog had begun to dig, a frantic, desperate motion. Snow and ash and splinters flew until Ranger unearthed something dark, blackened, and metal. Liam knelt and brushed the dirt away. A police badge, half melted, partially burned. Its center was warped, but the number was visible. 2749. Liam's breath caught. That was Emily Huxley's badge number. As if in answer, Ranger let out a quiet, shuddering whine. Then Liam saw something else nearby, a torn piece of cloth, deep blue, like the inside lining of a winter jacket. And blood. Just a few drops, but enough. Liam picked up the fabric. It was coarse and rough-stitched at the edge. He recognized it. Harper had been wearing that exact jacket. He stood quickly. She was here, and they caught her. His flashlight caught a smear leading toward a metal staircase that descended into a lower level, but something in his gut told him not to go down. Not yet. They needed backup. Evidence. A plan. Suddenly, movement. Ranger whipped around, body rigid. Liam froze. A soft creak of boots echoed from above, then silence. Someone else was still in the building. Liam backed toward the exit. Ranger followed, his steps careful but ready to pounce. As they slipped back into the main hall, Liam grabbed a folder from the desk, the one with the map, and tucked it beneath his coat. They exited the warehouse through a side door, just as the snowfall thickened. The forest swallowed them again. 10 minutes later, they reached the cruiser. Ranger climbed in first, then Liam. Both breathed hard, fogging the windows. Liam turned to the dog. "They were cops," he said quietly. "Or worse, wore the uniform so no one would question it." Ranger rested his head on Liam's lap. From the woods behind them, the warehouse sat still, watching, but the badge in Liam's pocket burned like truth. Snow was falling harder by the hour, blanketing Pine Hollow in silence. Liam sat alone in the back office of the Holloway Police Department, a dim lamp flickering over a table cluttered with manila folders, photographs, and a melted badge still wrapped in cloth. Ranger was at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes heavy but watchful. The building had thinned out for the night. Only a few rookies remained, their footsteps echoing through the halls, oblivious to the storm that had already begun to gather from within. The door opened without a knock. Deputy Chief Marcus Brandt stepped inside. He filled the frame like a storm cloud. 6'3", broad across the shoulders, his uniform perfectly pressed as always. His silver hair was slicked back and trimmed high over the ears. Behind his mirrored glasses, no one ever really saw his eyes. They said he never raised his voice because he never had to. He simply looked at you, and people fell silent. Liam stood instinctively. "Sir?" Marcus didn't smile. "You've been busy." Liam nodded slowly. "Just doing my job." "Your job doesn't involve breaking into federal properties, seizing materials without chain of custody protocol, or following ghost files tied to defunct task forces." His voice was flat, measured. "I have reason to believe this connects to a missing officer, Detective Emily Huxley." Marcus stepped further in. "And what exactly did you find, Liam?" Before he could answer, something stung the side of his neck. Liam staggered back. A second man had entered, plain clothes, short-cropped hair, expression blank. He slipped a syringe back into his jacket. The world tilted. Liam tried to grab his gun, but his knees buckled. The desk blurred. Ranger barked, leapt to his feet, but a taser shot snapped through the room, hitting the shepherd mid-leap. Ranger collapsed, muscles seizing, a yelp breaking from his chest. Liam's vision narrowed to a tunnel. Marcus leaned over him. "You should have stayed quiet." Darkness swallowed everything. When Liam came to, he was lying on cold metal. The air was suffocating, heavy with smoke and diesel. A faint rumble beneath him told him he was moving, probably in the back of a transport truck. His hands were bound with plastic cuffs. His head pounded. Then he heard it, scratching, frantic, sharp, again and again. "Ranger?" he croaked. The sound continued. A weak, muffled whine followed, then scratching again, nails against metal. Liam rolled to his side, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. He slammed his shoulder into the wall. "Ranger!" A voice answered from behind a wall of steel, muffled, then coughing. The truck stopped. Doors creaked open. Footsteps. Marcus's voice. "Burn it. No trace." The doors slammed shut again. Silence. Then the hiss of fuel being poured. Inside a sealed container across the lot, Ranger was trapped. His body trembled from the taser, but his spirit hadn't broken. He pawed at the welded seam of the door, again and again. His nails cracked. Blood oozed at the quicks, but he didn't stop. He pressed his ear to the wall. Nothing. Then a sound, soft, metallic. The back latch of Liam's container clicked. Light flooded in. Nora Mitchell stood there, breath ragged, cheeks flushed with panic. She wore a heavy parka over her scrubs and had a wrench in one hand. "Come on," she said quickly, reaching down and cutting Liam's cuffs. "Nora, how?" "No time. They took Ranger, another container." Liam staggered out, using her shoulder to stay upright. The yard behind the station was dim, lit only by the flickering security lights. Smoke was beginning to curl from one container. A small fire had already been lit at its base. Liam ran, stumbling through slush and snowdrifts. "Ranger!" From inside the container, a scratching pause, then another. Liam grabbed a crowbar from a nearby workbench and drove it into the seam. He pried hard. Metal shrieked. The hinges buckled. With one final jerk, the door burst open. Ranger collapsed into his arms, smoke clinging to his fur. His paws were bleeding, his breathing shallow. "You stubborn mutt," Liam whispered, pulling him out. They staggered behind the maintenance shed. Nora was already there, unlocking her car. Liam slid Ranger into the back seat. His hands shook. "He was scratching the door the whole time," he said. Nora nodded. "I know." They drove away without headlights, tires crunching beneath the snow. Back at Nora's clinic, they moved quickly. Ranger was sedated and treated, bandaged, hydrated. As Liam sat beside him in the small recovery room, his eyes fell on a piece of folded paper on the counter. The envelope was addressed to him in sharp handwriting. No one had seen who left it. He opened it. A single note, short, written in red ink. "Emily is still alive. Trust me. H." Liam's hand trembled. Outside, sirens began to scream. But inside, Ranger finally slept, his body broken, but his heart unshaken. And now, Liam wasn't just chasing a ghost. He was chasing the truth. The wind had picked up by the time Liam and Ranger reached the edge of the old electric substation just outside Pine Hollow. The structure had long been decommissioned, its power lines now little more than skeletal threads stretched across the frozen horizon. The building hunched like a forgotten relic, surrounded by rusted fencing and tangled bramble. Snow coated the ground, but beneath it, Liam could see footprints, some small, recent, some older, disappearing into the darkened archways near the base. Ranger stopped at the gate, ears perked, his body alert. Though still recovering from the trauma of the container, he moved with renewed purpose. His nose brushed the ground. He let out a low, whimpering growl and nudged Liam forward. The signal had come from the melted badge they had recovered, the one half burned in the warehouse. Nora, earlier that day, had detected a faint ping from a low-frequency locator embedded within its titanium core, something only used for high-risk personnel like undercover agents. It had taken hours to trace, bouncing between repeater stations until one final signal led them here. The substation loomed ahead, windows shattered, its doors barely hanging on their hinges. They slipped inside. The air was thick with mildew and oil. The shadows clung to the walls like mold. Liam kept his flashlight low, sweeping across discarded wires, broken terminals, and frost-covered lockers. In the corner of the room, hidden beneath a panel that had been torn open, was a hatch. Its edges were lined with old, rusted bolts. Faint scratches surrounded it, claw marks, desperate fingers. Someone had tried to escape. Ranger pawed at the edge, let out a single bark. Liam knelt. "She's down there." He forced the hatch open. Cold, damp air poured out like breath from a buried lung. Below was a steep concrete shaft lined with metal stairs, barely lit by a few flickering emergency bulbs. They descended in silence. At the bottom, the tunnel narrowed into a corridor, walls wet with condensation and lined with exposed wiring. Ranger moved ahead, tail stiff, nose twitching. The silence deepened, thick enough to taste. Then, a sound, a faint cough. Liam froze. His hand moved to his sidearm. At the far end of the corridor, a small room glowed faintly with the yellow-orange flicker of a dying bulb. As they approached, Liam raised his light and stopped cold. Emily Huxley sat slumped in the corner of a small cell. She was thinner than he remembered from the old department photos, cheekbones sharp, hair matted with sweat and dirt, one eye swollen shut. Her wrists were chafed from rope burns, but she was breathing, alive. Ranger whined, then ran forward and pressed himself against the bars. Emily's head lifted slowly. For a moment, her eyes were distant, unfocused. Then they locked onto the dog. "Ranger?" she whispered, voice cracked and dry. The shepherd let out a mournful sound, low and trembling, and gently pushed his snout between the bars, nuzzling her hand. She broke. Her hand slid along his muzzle. She wept without sound, fingers clinging to him. Liam found the key latch rusted, but not locked. He forced the door open with a crowbar and knelt beside her. "Emily," he said softly, "I'm Officer Liam Brooks. You're safe now." She nodded faintly. "They tried to erase me, said no one would come." "Well," he said, offering his hand, "someone did." Above them, Ranger barked sharply, ears pulled back, eyes on the shadows behind. Something was happening. Back at the police archive building, Marcus Brandt stood inside the secured evidence room. He was alone, aside from a briefcase, now open, its contents spread on the table, data chips, hard drives, physical files all linked to SCP-X08 and the failed undercover operation that had buried Emily. He picked up a lighter, But before the flame could spark, the room burst open. Harper Lane stood at the door, breathless but defiant, a live streaming phone gripped in one hand and a body cam strapped to her chest. "Smile, Chief," she said. "You're live." Behind her, 2 state investigators entered, followed by a federal liaison in a black windbreaker marked DOJ. Marcus's mask didn't crack, but the flicker of the lighter died. He placed it on the table and raised his hands. "No need for theatrics," he said, tone bored. Harper didn't flinch. "You were going to burn her memory. You nearly burned her partner alive." From behind her, one of the agents stepped forward. "We have reason to believe you obstructed a federal investigation, concealed a missing officer, and participated in illegal detainment." Marcus chuckled, then looked at Harper. "And all because a dog wouldn't let it go." Back in the tunnel, Emily sat wrapped in Liam's coat, supported by his arm. Ranger lay beside her, pressed close like a shadow that refused to leave. "I thought he was dead," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Liam looked down. He never stopped looking. They climbed back toward the surface together, slow, quiet, but not alone. Outside, the snow had stopped, the wind calmed, the world had not ended, but it had changed. The courtroom was still. In the front row sat Liam Brooks, uniform clean but collar slightly askew, hands folded tightly over his lap. Beside him, Emily Huxley sat in a tailored black blazer and a soft gray scarf around her neck, the faint bruising along her jawline nearly gone. Her hair had been trimmed, cleaned, and swept back loosely, less for style, more for peace. Her posture was upright, but her fingers tapped lightly against her knee. Beneath the bench, Ranger lay on a thick folded blanket, head resting on his paws, eyes alert as ever. The judge's gavel cracked through the air. "Marcus Brandt, for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, conspiracy to conceal federal intelligence, and unlawful detainment, this court finds you guilty on all counts." There was no reaction from Marcus. His expression remained stony, lips drawn in a pale line. His silver hair had dulled in the weeks since his arrest, and the crispness of his former uniform was replaced by a loose gray jumpsuit. But he didn't speak. He hadn't spoken since his capture. When the bailiffs escorted him out, Ranger lifted his head, watching him go, not with fear, but the unblinking steadiness of one who had seen monsters and chosen not to become one. Outside, the winter sun cast golden streaks through the courthouse windows. Emily stepped into the light, closed her eyes for a long moment, and exhaled. "I never thought I'd feel air without counting the seconds," she said. Liam stood beside her. "You've got a whole future of seconds now." She looked down at Ranger and smiled. "And someone who never gave up." A month passed. Pine Hollow thawed slowly under the touch of early spring. Snow turned to slush, and the woods, once cold and haunted, came alive with color again. And with that thaw came healing. Not fast, not perfect, but real. On a sunny morning in March, a crowd gathered on the outskirts of town, in front of a newly renovated brick building. The walls gleamed with fresh paint, the glass windows clear and open to the sun. A sign above the door read, "The Ranger Center, Canine Rescue and Rehabilitation." Nora Mitchell stood near the entrance, a clipboard under one arm, a bouquet of spring flowers in the other. She wore a denim jacket over a navy blue dress, her hair curled at the ends and tucked behind one ear. She didn't like speeches, but today she had agreed to say a few words. Harper Lane stood to her left, her ever-present camera slung at her side, a notebook in hand. She was more dressed up than usual, clean jeans, a blazer that almost fit, and her hair braided back neatly. The only thing she hadn't changed was the fire in her voice. "He didn't just survive," Harper said, addressing the crowd, her voice clear. "He fought. He endured. And because of him, people are alive today who otherwise wouldn't be. He is a reminder that loyalty has weight, that it lives beyond commands or training. It lives in choice." Ranger, sitting beside Liam at the foot of the podium, wore a black and gold canine vest embroidered with his name. His coat had grown back thicker in the months since the fire, though the scar down his flank remained, a badge of its own. One ear still bent slightly at the tip. When the ribbon was cut, Ranger was the first to walk through the door. Later that week, the four of them gathered around Nora's kitchen table. Liam, Emily, Harper, and Nora, with Ranger curled at their feet like a sentry off duty. The smell of strong coffee and cinnamon muffins filled the small room. Emily laughed for the first time in months, eyes soft and present. Harper scribbled notes between sips, pausing only when she read aloud a passage from her upcoming book. "It's called Fire and Fidelity, the story of Ranger," she said. "First chapter's nearly done." Nora raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that title?" "Absolutely," Harper said, "because that's what it was, not just survival, loyalty, stubborn as fire." Liam smiled. "That sounds like him." Ranger shifted his weight, resting his chin on Liam's boot. "I filed the paperwork today," Liam added after a moment. Everyone looked at him. He nodded toward the dog. "He's officially mine now." Emily leaned over and rubbed behind Ranger's ear. "Not that you weren't already." Liam chuckled and gently nudged the dog's side with his foot. "You hear that, buddy? You've got a home, and I've got the world's most stubborn roommate." Ranger let out a huff, almost amused, and wagged his tail once. Emily raised her mug. "To the gray-furred hero." Harper lifted hers too. "To the dog who ran into fire and came out with a family." They all toasted. Outside the window, the town of Pine Hollow seemed smaller, but warmer somehow. The forest still loomed beyond the hills, but it no longer felt like it was hiding something. And in the heart of it all, a once-abandoned shelter now buzzed with new beginnings. Lost dogs finding homes, old wounds finally being named and treated. Liam stepped out onto the porch later that night. Ranger followed, sitting beside him as the stars came out. The dog's eyes tracked the wind, his breath slow and steady. "You know," Liam said softly, "you saved more than Emily." Ranger said nothing, of course, but he pressed gently against Liam's leg. And that was more than enough. Sometimes miracles don't come with thunder or lightning. Sometimes they come on 4 legs, with a scar down their side, and a heart that refuses to give up. Ranger wasn't just a dog. He was a vessel of grace, loyalty, and divine intervention. When all hope seemed buried in silence and ash, God sent a reminder that light still breaks through darkness. In a world that often forgets its wounded and casts aside the voiceless, this story reminds us that love can resurrect the forgotten, justice can rise from the ruins, and even the most broken among us can become heroes in someone else's story. So, if this tale touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share this story with someone who needs hope. Subscribe to this channel if you believe that no soul, human or animal, deserves to be abandoned. Comment amen below. If you believe in second chances, in grace, and in a God who still works through the unexpected. May the Lord bless everyone watching this. May He guide, heal, and protect every broken heart waiting for a miracle.